All right, we're ready. Stripe Show podcast, exclusive. And we brought back one of our favorite guests who was with us earlier last week, Justin Parsons, who's up in Sea Island, one of the top coaches in the game. And we had a little conversation on the mental side, which was fascinating on when we're learning new stuff on the range and how to transfer that into performance out on the golf course, utilizing some of his players and how that works. Go check it out. But this episode, this exclusive, we are going X's and O's, folks. And look at this. Harris English, one of Justin's prize students, 4-time winner on the PGA Tour. We're going to be talking about Harris English. We're going to be talking about this golf swing. Perhaps you've seen it. Perhaps you like it. His name is Oosthuizen. He's from South Africa. We're going to be talking about that golf swing. And then one that I'm really excited about as well is this one. Can you guess it? He's from South Africa. Wait for it. Let's see if you can. Brandon Grace. That's right. Brandon Grace. 9-time winner on the European Tour. He's won, 2 times on the PGA Tour. The coach for all 3 of these guys joins me on the podcast, Justin Parsons. How you doing?
Travis, good to see you. Doing pretty good. Those are three nice looking golf swings there.
Yes, they are good looking golf swings. And we're going to start with this guy. All right. We're going to start. I recognize where he is right there. We're going to start with Harris. You've been doing some work here. Harris really had a great run of golf there back in 2021. Couple wins. It was great to see the Bulldog back out there playing at a high level. This is a golf swing, though, that when you started with Harris, we've talked about it a little bit via text. I'll let you take the stage here on some of the things that you guys have worked on, and particularly in the backswing, to get Harris swinging back perhaps the way he used to, right?
Yeah, Harry has got he's an unbelievable player, one of those generational type players. And, looking at him, like a lot of great players, he's got some unique movements. Certainly the way that he loads up his shoulders is quite unique. By that, I mean, sometimes if you take a Lee Westwood, you see somebody who kind of like the face of the club kind of gets open and he folds his right arm and the club sort of sits through his right arm. With Harris, he's all about width and all about kind of holding position. The left shoulder, you can see it kind of gets low. The club doesn't have a great deal of set in it as he goes back. And then as he winds up to the top of the backswing, he really holds a lot of angle, gets a lot of depth with those big long arms of his. Mm-hmm. And he kind of like loads his shoulders up in transition almost, where his hands kind of pop out in a slight kind of over the top-ish move with a little shallowing in the shaft. And that allows him to hit a little kind of tumbly cut that he likes to hit. So really, and looking at that, Travis, it's difficult because you're not really looking at any textbook to guide you with that. You're looking at the way somebody moves naturally, the feelings that he likes. And if you hold it in there at kind of waist high, we really still work very hard at making sure that takeaway is very connected. And even in this one here, I would probably like to see the club a nudge more in front of his hands than it is right there.
Okay.
He struggles with the sensation sometimes of, are you telling me to take it back wide? Are you telling me to set it? He's basically holding those wrist angles for an awful long time and gaining as much early width as he can. And that really helps for him to feel like he's wound up in the backswing. And that's a sensation that he's very, very familiar with. He holds onto those angles because, again, he's got a great pair of, shoulders and arms as you wind that all the way to the top. He goes from, really having it quite a long ways kind of steeper and in front of him to at the very top of the backswing. You can see he creates this illusion of great depth, if you like, at the very, very top of the backswing. If you take him right up there, the left arm's kind of low across his chest and everything's really wound up. But from face on, he creates a beautiful wind up into his right side, which is, something that, again, we work on a little bit with his natural movements and some of the way that his body structure is. It's sometimes difficult for him to get into his right side. He has a little niggly thing going on with his right hip, which certainly has plagued us a little really since the Ryder Cup. But in this one, you can see if you stop him up there at the top, he's really well wound up into that right side, which is which is important for
Mhm.
for Harris. And I think the other basics, the other fundamentals that had got a little lost whenever I took over the reins, making sure his alignment was really, really consistent, making sure his posture as a tall guy, with a long spine, we looked at his posture, made sure his balance points were good. And then really working up into a situation where he would wind the club up properly to the top of his backswing. And he's got fantastic, as you can see here from face on, fantastic rotary capabilities. A tight sequence, Travis, where his he doesn't drop the club under too much. Everything kind of gets going together, which again gets him hitting that kind of smash fade pretty well.
Mhm.
But one of the things I love to watch about Harris, if you take him through to the finish and hold it, you can see the pelvis drive that he has. You can see that right knee getting out in front of the left knee, right hip in front of the left hip, and a really dynamic, beautiful golf swing whenever he's in full flow.
Yeah, it is. It is a fluid swing. And let me throw a couple things at you here as I listen to you talk. And width. You talked about width, and width there. You can see his hands away from his chest. But you said something I think was really cool from this view as well, as we go to the target line view here, is that when he takes it halfway back, and you had me stop it like right here. So yes, he's wide, but you would like to see that club head out in front of the hand. So his hands are kind of in. His upper left arm, you can see, is really up against his chest. His hands are in, but the club head's a little out in front of him. And I remember through the stretch in 2021, I think I sent you a text. I said, when he does that, and we were talking, when he's able to get this look and then he keeps turning, he gets that shaft right there. It seems like, and tell me if I'm wrong, kind of a bit more on the vertical side versus, which is a good thing, versus when he kind of gets his hands running away from him early. If the club head kind of gets in, then the shaft doesn't get pitched as well there.
Yeah.
But when he's there, it seems like when he then changes direction, that club shaft just falls beautifully to the form. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. And you can imagine, Travis, within that, it's the challenge within that is to be really effective with half shots, because it's when he completes the backswing, to your point, as the transition happens, the hands come out a little bit, the club shallows down a little bit, and then he's absolutely spot on. It's just a little more of a challenge for us to be able to hit little half shots and little three-quarter shots, and something we work on it daily. And the fact is that when I'm watching the shot link, which my wife will tell you that I'm often doing when I should be paying attention to her, when he's hitting a shot from 168, 177, 184, 201, the amount of times in the year that I see him in 7 feet, 9 feet, 6 feet with those full short iron shots, because that swing is so tight and it's so athletic and efficient. He's a fantastic player from let's say 150 to 200 yards, and certainly when his driving, when he gets that repetitive shape. And one of the things about Harris that's really interesting, a lot of the time and the effort we put in is planning the sessions, making sure that his onus is on moving properly. His rhythm is a big thing to him. And he always sees himself more of an athlete and less of a technician. And when you're working with athletes, it's going to be about rhythm. It's going to be about poise and dominance and movements and bigger macro pictures, rather than little intricate little parts of the golf swing. So the intricate part of the golf swing, really, that his big the part that he needs to understand and needs to put the club in the right spot is that takeaway part. To your point, wide with the club in front of his hands is the recipe for Harris. And when he gets into that right spot, he could be a very dangerous player.
Yeah, I think it's good advice for so many, because let's face it, I think one of the most common errors is the hands kind of get away and the club head gets in behind early, and then it's just good luck with that. And that's a tough one. And here's the other thing I noticed, Justin, a lot, especially with these taller players. Harris is 6'3". This is a very sound setup. I mean, you look at this setup, and for the amateurs that are watching, I mean, this is perfect driver setup. Ball position off that left shoulder, hands in line. He's tilted slightly behind it. But one thing I see a lot is this little early kind of, almost like a little trace with the belt buckle. It's like there's a little early kind of pressure shift into the right side early. And then it's like, okay, now I'm going to turn and stay tall. I'm going to turn and stay tall and kind of load it into that right side. There's no like turn and then I'm kind of hanging left. It's little early shift into the right, turn, stay tall. I'm kind of standing up per se. I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit into the right side. But from here, and I see this with Luke List too, who just won last week, is from here when they're over there, then they can kind of fall into it. There's no really like sense of they have to back up. They can
they can push.
Yeah, right. They can push, and I see that with Harris there. He kind of pushes and falls left, and then he just unwinds and he's behind it. I mean, he's already behind it. He can do whatever he wants from there. And to your point, if he kind of gets the shaft prepared with that load up, it seems like with Harris, man, get out of the way. Like he's going to hit all the shots from that standpoint. But I just love that driver setup, that early load, pressure shift, staying tall. You can really see it with Bryson. You can really see it with the long drive guys, and then just push, go get it. Like you said.
There's no doubt you're right. And, and I've been, we have Swing Catalyst here. I'm looking at a lot of things, the ground force stuff. I think it's really fine. I mean, sorry to, it's kind of finding its feet without sounding too Irish about that. But we're beginning to I think we're beginning to teach it better. I think we're beginning to understand more implicitly. So to your point, there is a push from the left foot to the right foot with almost all great golfers, rotary athletes. You'll see a push from the left foot to the right foot. Once the pelvis repositions itself, really we're into the world of rotation. So inclined rotation, I think when you were describing the tallness, that's the kind of the slight kind of almost extending of the spine as we get to the very top, which really inclines the pelvis to allow the player then to push down into the left side. And if we look at Harris, if you take him on up a little notch, as we're around about this area, that's where the maximum amount, just around a little bit further, the maximum amount of pressures on his lead side. And to your point, as he then goes to the very, very top of the backswing, the pressure is already going down into the lead side for him, into his left foot. And the pressure, again, is something you alluded to. Once he pushes them, the pressure is actually backing up from his lead side because he's gone into the ground so hard there that now he's actually going to extend up through that left hip. That's what opens the pelvis and the hips in a really good golf swing. And then he's all the way through, letting that right side drive on out through the other side of it. So, what you're describing there is a really, really good athletic use of the floor. And when we look at it in video, obviously we see it in some slightly different ways. But, I think Hovland does it unbelievably well. I think Bryson, you see it in Kyle Berkshire. If you watch him hit golf balls and that long drive stuff, you can really begin to understand it.
All right, let's go to another one here. Here's a swing that when I play, people like this swing here, right? They like to watch Louis Oosthuizen swing the golf club. And
I like to watch Louis Oosthuizen swing. Sometimes I just stand there and, try not to say anything too stupid.
So, all right. So I'll just keep it an open canvas here. When you watch this, what can you share with us that is so magical to everyone when they watch this player swing? I mean, his rhythm's been so good, his balance, it's like Ernie Els, but smaller frame. But like, just talk to us about Louis Oosthuizen and how this swing works.
And a beautiful heavy hit on the golf ball. I think, some people that are listening might have had interest and listened to what Louis and I have done. I think giving some people into a little bit of a different insight, when you play golf with Louis, or you maybe, I've played golf with him, and I would say, well, what do you think of myself? He'll always go back to his drills, and it's funny that he has his own set of little things that he does. He hits golf balls with his feet together. He's very, very aware from face on of his balance. He makes sure that the line from his forehead through his nose, down through his chest, through his pelvis, through his ankles, everything's very, very balanced. And he hits balls with his feet together, and he works on his strike a little bit. And he does that really just to kind of find things. And then he'll take a little bit of a gentle step away with his feet, and he'll have a slightly wider stance, and then he'll move it. So his awareness of balance and his awareness of posture are, incredibly, almost unique to me. And if you take him back down to his starting posture, a lot of the time when we're working, I'm acting as a policeman, and he's sort of saying to me, listen, am I standing the correct distance from the ball? Am I well balanced? And if you bring him into his setup, a lot of people, and John Rahm is like this, a lot of great ball strikers like this, he really gets so close to the golf ball that if most amateurs stood there, they'd be pretty uncomfortable. Now, Louis is unusual because he's got slightly longer arms and shorter spine, longer legs, but he gets into the golf ball, creating room with his pelvis behind him, right through the centers, or even through the heels, towards the heels of the centers of his feet. We see that with John Rahm. We see that with Sergio Garcia. We see that obviously with Louis Oosthuizen. You see that with Paul Casey. A lot of really, really good ball strikers get into their posterior chain and have a starting position where they have to create space. And Louis is a starting position where he has to create space. And we work a lot on his setup. He's acutely aware of his alignment. He's acutely aware of the fact that, again, from a strength and conditioning standpoint, sometimes there's things that will make him aim a little to the right. We look at that an awful lot, and then from there, it's, he knows, he'll talk about when his golf swing feels too fast or feels too slow. And oftentimes when it feels too fast, it's because his right side hasn't loaded up correctly. So he does a lot of work in making sure that he can load the right side of his pelvis towards the top of his backswing, getting that nice strong depth at the top of his swing. And then when that's done, I think that he's really just fluid. I'm still, he creates a surprising amount of power. Very, very heavy hit on the golf ball. From face on, you can see here something that I'm studying a little bit. As you wind him up to the top of your backswing, especially with that little elbow brace on there, you'll detect some sneaky little arm bend in his golf swing. His lead arm bends a little bit as he gets towards the very, very top of the backswing, and definitely then re-straightens or reflexes through the impact area. And there is no doubt that that's a speed generator, something that we used to talk about JB Holmes doing an awful lot. But for the amount of effort that Louis seems to put into it, goodness me, he gets a lot of bang for his buck. And then it's a joy to watch him hit shots. And he had a great year last year. I'm looking forward to to seeing him in Phoenix and getting going again. And it's a golf swing that I feel my responsibility is to help him with his feels. Be responsible to knowing that it's a thing of great beauty and balance that you're working with, and trying to ensure that you're thoughtful in your approach and not overdoing it, because you give a pseudo genius like Louis the capacity to figure it out on his own, and 9 times out of 10 he'll do that.
Yeah, 4 runner-ups. That included the PGA and the US Open, 2/3, which included the Open Championship. And he was also 26 at the Masters. So if you're into top threes in the major championships,
big game hunter.
Yeah. There's so much here when I watch Louis. The first move, I think, is just so cash. When you watch the shaft and the lead arm, this straight line relationship, just like that move right there, boom, just everything together. Yeah. There's no real change in the lead wrist dynamic, and just getting that to start like that, and now that left shoulder's traveling across early, and it just gets everything just started correctly. Like when I think of Louis, yes, it's smooth, but it started correctly. And it was fascinating to hear you say when he gets into the right hip and loaded and not quick, it's like, okay, now go, right? And you can kind of see that with Louis, like it's just all so together and loaded into the right side, and now coming down. And the other thing with Louis, and I want to point this out, is when I pull up this other view, here we go. And this isn't a perfect camera angle, but we'll get the idea here. He's a player that rotates the face a little bit, Justin. He rotates that toe right there, a bit toe up. You'll certainly see more players. And again, the camera angle is not ideal, but I get it. But the toe is rotated a little more up. We'll certainly see players like Victor and Rahm, where the toe is more down, but Louis always played like this. In fact, you'll see a lot of players from this era. Ernie Els played like this, where the face was a bit more rotated toe up. You could maybe see less of the face at the top, and then coming down, he just very cleverly gets the face to rotate back down and square up and then release back up the other side. But I would say, would you agree that there is more face rotation with Louis, say, compared to some other players who tend to get the face a little more hooded, a little more shut, where you can see more of the face at the top?
There's no doubt. I mean, this is a really interesting topic, Travis, and forgive me if I go too deeply into it.
No, please.
The face obviously is going to be impacted by the way the player holds the club and the way the shoulders and the spine are able to load the club to the top of the backswing, or the muscles surrounding the spine, if you like. So when you get a very, very traditional grip like Louis, where he has a neutral to strong left hand grip and a neutral to weak right hand grip, and he creates pressure on his left hand, which would go to the right, and the right hand go to the left. In essence, a little bit like a butterfly grip, if you could imagine the butterfly grip you would know in a bunker. That tends to put his shoulders into a position where the front parts of his shoulders will load the golf club, and we'll see a lot of toe up. We see that in Rory's golf swing, like you said, in Ernie's golf swing. When you look at the tendencies for the players who use the lower part of the shoulders, the lats, the serratus, the triceps to load the club, they tend to have a slightly weaker grip or a lot more handle lean, or both, in order to be able to generate that appearance where the golf club will be, to your point, a lot more close to the path. But they're also loading it with a different muscle structure, if you like. So Louis got a much more classic, we would refer to as classic kind of muscle structure and the way he grips the club. I think that's changing. I think, to your point, I think we're going to probably see more Victor Hovlands in the next 20 years than we are Louis Oosthuizens. I think the way that we're teaching the grip will probably change just a little bit to accommodate some of those movements, as we see people like Morikawa become more dominant, Victor becoming more dominant, the things that Bryson's doing to make the body fire more effectively. And the only part of the game that it can be a little more troublesome with, as we can see, is the short game, because you don't get the same early opening in the golf swing, and they don't tend to, Bryson, Victor, perhaps be as good pitching the ball and hitting maybe chip shots around the greens as some of those others would be. And that's something that you've got to obviously balance if you're thinking about this yourself.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, I couldn't agree with that anymore. What you just said there with Louis and Victor, and the way you see these patterns, and and it's just the genius of Louis, right? This is a way he has swung the golf club the whole time, and to get in there and maybe weaken that grip and flex the lead wrist more. I mean, you're playing with fire at that point. You would never do that to a player like this, who's generated his swing around, obviously rotating the face the way that it is, and a little more extension in the lead wrist. You can certainly see it right here, and keeping that in line and then loading to the top. But look, he comes down, got the shaft lean, got enough rotation, lets it release back up the other side. Obviously, his feels and his rhythm and the way he puts it together, I mean, it's eye candy, right? I mean, you just sit there and you watch it and you're like, damn, like, how does that dude ever miss a shot? I mean, it's.
But I think to your point, I think we're obviously, even with the young players I teach now, there's so much information, and I quite often encourage them not necessarily to get rid of all the information, because I don't think they're going to do that, but to be able to filter out the bits that are going to help you. So if you're watching Louis, look at his posture, look at the way he creates a posture that makes him create room in the golf swing. Look at his rhythm, look at his balance, the timing of the movement. I mean, I don't think that matters so much whether he's got lead wrist arrangements like DJ or whoever else. I think you can learn great things from great players, and I think with Louis, you're learning about rhythm, balance, putting yourself in a position over the ball where you can organize things well. And I think those are things that all players, regardless of the way you want to grip, left wrist, closed open face, that you can learn from.
All right, we got one more here. Fellow South African. This guy is Brandon Grace, who you've been working with. Brandon's 33, of course, from South Africa. He is just a touch taller than Louis, about 5'10", and a golf swing that looks like this is in your bay here. Take us through some of the stuff you're working on with Mr. Brandon Grace.
Well, we got together. Let me think. We kind of started the back end, maybe November time, just before we went to Vegas. Did some work in Vegas with him. He went to Japan, played pretty good, and this is actually taken. The Bears Club was down here this past weekend.
Okay.
Another beauty. I mean, these South African guys. I don't know what they eat down there, but they create a lot of power without sometimes looking as if they're going to that much effort to create the amount of power that they do. And Brandon's the same as that. The big thing that Brandon's tendencies. With the way that his body is positioned naturally, he has a little bit of a leftward kind of lean when he sets up to the ball. His right shoulder gets out in front of his left. His spine tilts towards the target just a little bit. So if you can imagine, most things with Brandon's golf swing are to try to accommodate a little bit freer rotation. So for him, we worked from down the line here at getting him into really, really good posture. He had a little bit of a bend, more so than I wanted him to have, through his upper back. There should be a little bit of a bend through the upper back, but if there's too much, it limits rotation. If there's too little, it also limits rotation. We got his head posture up into a more neutral position. Had to work hard to accommodate, because he went in a little bit of extension with his lower back. So we had to work hard to get that whole spinal column rearranged. Actually take him to a point where he got a little closer to the golf ball to really kind of soften his arms out a touch. And from there, he's really able to rotate a little bit easier in the backswing. You can see this is pretty good. This is a 3-iron that he hit. And from a position standpoint, he gets the club working up the plane really, really well. I show him that. I tell him how wonderful it looks at takeaway. I've never had to do anything with that. You can see, I'm sure you like that, Travis. That's right up your alley there with what I know you value, those good takeaway positions. And as he sets it, you can't get much better than that. He sets it through his right shoulder. The shaft sits right on the golf ball, and at the very, very top of the backswing, you can probably see elements of the slight restriction in his rotation at the top, because it doesn't exactly, he's not going to go high hands like Harris. He's nice and tight to his body. He likes that feeling. But goodness me, when you look on the swing cat and stuff, on the pressure he puts through the ground right here in early part of his transition, very, very fast, good agile lower body movement, and lots of explosive work going on through impact. And he can hit a really powerful fade shot. Very much a field player, loves controlling trajectory, loves shaping the golf ball. So my primary with him was really to do a real job on his posture and his balance at setup. And then I've tried to soften his arms a little bit in his golf swing. I felt that he's a player who, when he came out, he had very soft elbows in his swing, and he created a lot of width in his transition. And he went towards trying to be a guy who had more width in his golf swing. And I felt it restricted his turn a little bit. So, one of the drills that we do a left arm only drill where he just makes back swings and hits shots occasionally with his left arm only, where he has to soften that left arm out in order to create good rotation. And that tends to give him a good feeling of soft width without getting too tight. He doesn't like the sensation of being too tight in his golf swing.
When you say turn back, is it kind of shoulders and hips? Is he trying to get the mobility of kind of everything turning back, or is it more upper?
Yeah, I think it definitely gets that left shoulder, working from underneath. If you ever, make golf swings with your left hand as a right-handed player on it, you get that feeling. If you're doing it with one hand, you can't really do it through flexing out your elbow, because you can't get a turn. So you kind of soften your elbow, and you start to really wind up through your, through your lat, through the underside of your left arm, through your rib cage. And to your point, that tends to get his right hip loading nicely. With his movement patterns, he would be definitely prone to a little bit more of a traditional sway. We talked in the last segment about swaying a little in the backswing, but when he's able to rotate freely, that sway kind of softens down, and he he presents the club better. But when he's not rotating, he'll come over it. He'll wipe shots out to the right a little bit more. But there's a lot of things I really love about his golf swing, and I'm pretty excited to be working with him in 2022. I think with some of the plans he has in place, he could show some good form in this new year.
Yeah, I mean, he's, you think of Brandon Grace, like he's 33. In the States, the casual fan knows, like, he won RBC, he won Puerto Rico back in 2021, but he's won 9 times in Europe too. I mean, this is a world-class player.
He almost won at Chambers Bay. He almost won at Whistling Straits. He got to 11th in the world when he really just came out to the United States. And, one of the things that the golf fans, I guess they probably don't know that it's difficult for any of these guys coming from, a different part of the world, and South Africa is a country so rich in, in culture and history, and they live for going out into the bush, and they live for their natural environment, and they watch rugby matches, they watch cricket. When guys come into the United States, it's a very, very different. It's a big learning curve for them, and it's it's something that we talk about a little bit, and hopefully with my semi-international flair, I try and understand NFL and rugby and all this other stuff, so I can chat to everyone about it. But I can see that it's a big transition for them, and those guys that are they have a lot of things going. They've got this beautiful facility here that we were working at, and they've got a nice home, etc. But what it's like to be moved away from home, and I think as he's getting more comfortable, he's got his family with him here now. He's got a lot of good things in position.
These South Africans, man, they kind of learn how, it seems, we were talking about the closed face, more flex lead wrist. They tend to probably extend the lead wrist more, and rotate the face a bit more, and then do this beautiful job of getting it back on the ball. But that does lead to some of their ability, just wonderful short game players, in particularly out of the sand. Great hands with some of that extension and how you can utilize the bounce. There's a lot of avenues to do this, and that lead wrist condition is this always one that fascinates me, Justin, because I agree with you. I think in a lot of modern teaching today, there's a lot of that weaker grip, more neutral flex in the wrist. We see with the Victor Hovlands, the Colin Morikawas. But it's fascinating to me.
It's more, in my opinion, it's probably more efficient for full swing play. As I've researched it, and I use myself as a guinea pig, and but it is less efficient for short game play.
Yeah.
So pick your poison.
Well, I mean, and look at Hovland, right? I mean, he's struggled with that part of the game, with that leading edge dig. I'll never forget. I used to work with this Champions Tour player. His name was Mike.
Who? Mike?
Years ago. His name was Mike Goodis.
Okay.
And Mike was a great amateur player, never played the regular tour, and one of the nicest men in the entire world. I mean, just an absolute peach of a guy. And he turned pro when he turned 50, and got on the Champions Tour and played successfully for about, I would say, 9 or 10 years. Had a nice Champions Tour career. Ended up with 1 win. When I first started with him, I mean, you want to talk about taking that lead wrist, right? Like Arnie, and flexed and leaning the shaft forward and compressing it, and then taking that into short game and hitting every short game shot like that. And I told him, I said, look, Mike, I don't think your left wrist has ever went to extension in its entire life. You hit every shot, just boom, 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 So when we work really hard on a short game to soften it, to not have so much shaft lean. But, he was taught, dig it out of the dirt with, face shut, lead wrist flex, lean that shaft forward, turn and rip it through that leading edge. And man, can he go hit it? I mean, he could hit it. I mean, really unbelievable ball striker. But that short game shot, the little finesses, utilizing the bounce, man, he struggled with that. And it was just decompression of this shaft lean and learning how to hit some different shots. And he did get better at it, but it was a haul. And I bring it up just because it's just an example of what players who have a lot of that can struggle, and some of those.
the other interesting thing in there, and if we're going into the future, in tennis, people don't care in tennis. They change their grips to hit different shots. And that's
Right.
as the ball's moving, right? The ball's moving fast and you're changing your grip to hit a different shot. So I always wonder to myself, I'm just thinking about as the future unfolds. I know that Pete Cowan, for example, who's a fabulous short game coach. He got Gary Woodland. I worked with Gary for a year or so. 10 fingers around or a putter grip around the greens. So Gary would use that, and Gary's really got a fabulous short game now. So I often wonder to myself, whether in the future we may see these players morph into a certain pattern that they can cement for the full swing, like you said. Get that left wrist, get the rotation onto it, stable club face stays stable for longer, and then maybe do we transition to the short game to being more artistic, more creative? We may change our grips in order to do that. It's a big ask, but the game's evolving all the time, and maybe that's something we'll see. I don't know.
I think it's going to be taught at an earlier stage. I don't think there'll be less sticker shock, right? Because you just grow up as part of it. It's like in the full swing, learning how to hit it hard at an early age. Well, we're starting to see those players come out, and that needle is being moved, and we saw it. I saw it. I was out in Palm Springs, and there's the guy by the name of James Hart Dupree from South Africa. And
that's a big boy.
This dude, nicest guy in the world too, by the way. He did the podcast last week. I mean, what an absolute sweetheart this guy is. He's standing on the range. I'm standing there watching him, and he's hitting his driver. Okay. And he's just cruising. He's not even working. He's not breaking a sweat. And I'm looking down at the numbers. 209? What? Ball speed, just cruising. 6'10", built like a shit brick house, this guy, right? I mean, he's just wide and muscles. And I walk away thinking, that is where golf is going. That is that's where we're going. Maybe not 6'10", but we're going 6'6", 6'7", 6'8".
And he's also got a pretty orthodox looking move too.
He does.
In terms of, or I shouldn't say orthodox, I should maybe old fashioned, or more of the Ernie style move. But to your point, you get these incredible athletes with mass and size. Then they're going to have just physical advantages that others might not have, and certainly with him, I mean, he's got a classic looking golf swing in this huge frame with incredible levers, and 209 at cruising is that's a specific advantage.
I was thinking, okay, Bryson just put himself 20, 22 yards or so past DJ if he wants to, it's comfortable 20 to 25. And then I'm thinking, okay, this guy just put himself another 20 to 25 past Bryson.
Have you watched Wilco Nienaber hit a shot? Another South African player, incredible amount of speed as well. I don't think he's quite as fast as Hart, but I think he's probably in and around about the same numbers.
He's just under him. He's right there. Yeah, it's impressive to watch. He made some good points. I think about the same stuff, but just hit it with a little slightly different grip. I think the tennis analogy is perfect. Just hit this one with a slightly weaker grip, rotate the face, may feel a little more extension. All right. And then here's your full swing grip. And then maybe there's a variation for a different shot. Like you can just toggle the grip and, to do what you want to do to hit the shots that you want to hit. And I'm surprised, I think a DJ who just kind of opens the face, keeps the lead wrist the same. Rahm seems to manage it pretty well. Rahm's short game is really good, obviously.
Unbelievable.
And and Rahm's he's up there. So he manages it. Victor's on his way. Obviously, he's learning the techniques.
He's figuring it out pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, we could talk forever. It's fascinating. This is fun, man. I love just looking at it, talking golf with you, and you just learn, and you say things every time we talk. There's always a couple things I write it down. I just think about, okay, that's really interesting. And it's always great just as a teacher to talk technique, but also, with the podcast, the audience loves to know what the players are doing and why. And you just look at those three different swings and how different they are. Harris, lead arms down and low. And then here's Brandon, he's got his arm more up here. And, they're just all a little bit different and have their own set of patterns and techniques and needs. And you have to coach them accordingly. But we'll do it again, man. I know they're all playing in Phoenix right? So your
Yeah.
season is, well, you're about ready to get rolling here in a big way.
I'm getting rolling. I was in Ireland, beginning of middle of January. We got some visa bits and pieces to do, which thankfully are all in the bag. So Phoenix, and then we're into the Florida swing, and pretty soon we'll be at Augusta. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting it back out there.
All right. Great stuff. Justin Parsons, Stripe Show Podcast. Can't thank you enough, buddy.